thank you guys for coming back to the video, and let's just jump in where we left off. It was, I think, also we went on this trip to Louisville. Do you remember?
I remember that.
That was very interesting, and we went there. It was like a college thing. We were housed in a hotel that they had like higher education degrees offering and stuff like that. That was kind of interesting. And I remember, again, you were the one with your books. You had your stuff there, your papers, you're collecting pamphlets, and I'm there like, how many pamphlets is she going to collect? And I think I asked you, like, are you gonna come here? And you said, are you gonna try this degree? I think you said you should always have options. You never know. I think you said something like that.
I remember that.
I'm like, well, let me grab a pamphlet too, and I just grabbed a few myself. Because why not? We're there to experience and to learn stuff. So why not I was literally walking around, like, where are the snacks, where are the cookies, where are the muffins, or whatever they have. Because they did have it, I think, like, in another room. That's what I was looking for. But you were there collecting pamphlets from literally every university that was in the hall. I'm like, this is how she does it. This is how she does it. Wow. That was
you have to weigh up your options. Yeah.
Right. I remember the morning we were leaving. We were leaving Louisville, and we ran to the mall. Remember, we took the bus that early morning.
Oh my gosh, yes, I remember.
And you're like, oh my god, we had
Who
to
was it? I think Nicolette was there as well.
We had to go back to the mall. Was like 20 minutes from the hotel, and we literally jumped on the first bus. It was just so chaotic that morning, but it was a great trip. I remember, I literally, when I scroll through my photos on my computer, sometimes I go back, I'm like, wow, this was a good memory.
I do too. I do as well. I like the good memories.
I literally can't remember the bad stuff. It's true. Can't remember the bad stuff. All good. I remember us, even the dinner after graduation, when we were there and we were just having fun, talking, and it was a great time. It really was, and I'm really proud of where you are today. Really, I am. I mean, you are a doctor of psychology, like I said, and so we left UWI. We did other stuff, but after UWI, you did your master's degree. So how did you transition from Jamaica to the UK? Because that's where you did your degree. How did you do that?
So in terms of transitioning, so after leaving UWI, I worked at Digicel for a little over a year, thereabout. And I kept on applying at Curtin. I applied everywhere.
I know. We spoke about this. We spoke about the scholarship.
I applied everywhere, and the first one that came through and was Oxford, and I was very excited. I didn't end up going because I couldn't have the scholarship, but I did the interview and everything, which was good because it set the scene to do the other interviews. So I applied in Bristol, I applied in China, I applied everywhere. China. Applied to and eventually I managed to cop 2 of the scholarships, and I decided to go to Liverpool. Nice. So I think I don't remember the number of scholarships, but I remember they kept on coming back. Oh, we can't offer you a place, and then I had a little bit of hope when I received these 2 offers, and so this is how I ended up in England. So I decided to go to Liverpool, and this is where I did my Masters of Arts in Education, because even though I did psychology, I thought for me, because if I'm looking at reading development, the next best option is to look what happens in the classroom setting and how you can actually deliver it. So for me, it was very important to do something in education, and it was a beautiful experience. It was hard because it was cold, really, but this was my
that
first
is the
time.
UK.
It was my first time living outside of Jamaica on my own. So it was a great experience, just learning, and of course still keeping in tune with finding opportunities to align with reading. And what England actually taught me was again giving me some more examples of never taking any opportunity for granted. So I remember when I was there on campus and I was searching for a job, and so I saw that you they have this at UWI as well, where you have student ambassadors bringing people around the campus.
Right.
And so I said, okay, they have an opening. I can be a student ambassador.
Of
So
course.
doing something that you love,
I would want to do
interacting
that.
with people.
Trust me, I would want to do that. I would really want to do that.
Getting paid for it. So I said, all right, let me submit my application. So I submitted it, and I got through, and I said, Curtin, I'm excited now. I'm going to show students, new students around the campus. And the position that they gave to me, those positions were already filled.
Mm-hmm.
And they said they needed somebody. We have another job. They needed somebody to stand at the door and open the door. So you open the door, you close the door.
No way.
Yes. So I thought the lady was joking. I honestly, but she was very serious. She said that you stand inside because it's an automatic door, so it can only be open from inside. So you open the door, so you let people in and out. And of course, you had the groups of students coming in with the ambassadors, and I'm there opening, and it's a cold place. So every time you open the door, you feel the cold. But then on my third day, I remember, because you get to talk to people, welcome them, say good morning, and you did the job to the best of your ability.
Right.
Even though it's just literally pressing a button and then pressing it again to close it. And it's there that I got into a conversation with a man, and he was from the Liverpool City Council, and he said, we were just talking, and he was asking me about my background, and he said, I'm in charge of a reading program. Do you want to get some training?
Wow.
So I said to myself, yes, definitely. So he gave me his card, and this is where I really got to practice in terms of delivering reading instruction.
Right.
And I said to myself, that really, I was very upset, to be honest. I said opening and closing the door, and it's very cold. But then, hindsight really is the master of experience, and it shows you just to be appreciative of what you have in that
is so true.
moment, because you never know what opportunity might come.
That's true. You're opening a door, and a literal door opened for you. You were opening doors.
About it that way.
You're opening doors, and the door literally, you opened the door the right time, that one time, and look what happened.
Yes.
Wow, that is. See, that's what I mean when I say you will do what you have to do. You will do it because you know the goal, you know the end goal, and that's who you've been. That is who you've been, and it obviously has not changed. And it's a good character. It's a good quality to have as a person. You do what you have to do to ensure that you get to the goal at the end of the day. You do what you're supposed to do. That's really great. So you're doing your Master's of Arts in Education, and you completed that in what, 2 years?
No, so it was a 9-month program.
Ooh.
So it's very quick, and I was very intentional about it, and I'll tell you why. I was trying to find the quickest master's program, because going back to, so leaving UWI, just going quickly back to UWI, I had applied to go directly into my PhD in Australia here. But I didn't really understand their system, because in Australia they have a 4-year degree, whereas in Jamaica we have 3 years.
Right.
So I got confused there. So I thought, okay, if persons in Australia can transition straight into their PhD from their undergrad, it must be the same case. And so I applied, and I wasn't successful to come to Australia, and they said you need to do a master's degree. And so I went ahead and did a master's degree in England, and then I resubmitted my application to Curtin, which is where I ended up. And yes, it was approved at that point in time.
Wow. So basically you just needed 1 more year of education, of higher education, basically. Because we have 3 in Jamaica, and then the 9 months with it, which is an academic year.
Yes, it's still academic. Yes.
Wow, that's interesting. That is interesting. So basically, you had researched where you wanted to go, and it was straight into your PhD. You wanted this PhD in psychology since you were at UWI. When you realized this is what I'm going to do at the end of the day. Wow, and you took another exit. And then you came through, like, you see what I mean? You came back. It's a full circle moment. It's good though that they accepted the application for another year. That's good.
Yeah, and
Wow.
my supervisor, then supervisor, he was the one I reached out to in 2012, and
Mm-hmm.
I said to him, I don't think it's gonna really work out because I have to go away and do this degree. And
Right.
so when I contacted him years later in 2015, which is when I started, he was very excited and he said, "Yes, I'm still interested in being your supervisor." So
Wow.
just having that connection made a world of difference.
That is really good. That really is good. Wow. This story is so interesting because I had no clue about all of this. I mean, I think we had spoken once, or you mentioned it somewhere, but I think it was to me because I had asked, because I'm always asking questions. I think I had asked, and you mentioned that you went to the UK first because, or was it? I think it was on one of your own, like talks or seminars or what or something, where you mentioned that you had applied to Curtin before and it wasn't successful, so you went to do your master's and then you reapplied. I remember you saying that somewhere. I remember that for sure, but I didn't know it was to that extent. Wow. So you're now in Australia. This is 2000 and what? 13?
We're in 2015 now, so I arrived here April 2015.
2015, and you started your PhD. But
Yes,
earlier in the podcast when you started, you mentioned that you're married now. So at what point did this enter your PhD life? Because from what we've known, you left Jamaica, you went to the UK to do your master's, you reapplied for your PhD, you got in, but at no point did you mention, "Hey, I was dating and I was engaged." None of that came up. I mean, you were opening doors. Did you open that door also for your husband to walk through? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so when I arrived in 2015, I moved on to the campus, and
Right.
I was immediately, so we had a postgraduate dorm. So I lived on hall to begin with, and one of my friends, and she came to the wedding as well, Tegan. She's very beautiful. She said to me, she's Australian as well.
Okay.
And she said, "Welcome to the family." So that was my first interaction with Australia.
Right.
And I oftentimes say to Matthew, my husband, Matt, I oftentimes say to him, I came to Australia to mind my business.
Yes.
And leave, because my plan was to go back to England, probably go to Netherlands. There was a center that I wanted to do some studying. So we actually met, April, and then we started, and it was chance that, I'm not going to say chance, because I oftentimes like to say that it's God's working.
Yes.
Because he works late. Well, he's a submariner in the Australian Navy.
Wow.
And so he, worked late shifts, and so we met at church as a basis, but there was a particular, we call it home group, like you have Bible study, but it wasn't so much of a Bible study, it was more of meeting at one of the person's home, and then yes, you'd read the Bible, but then you just interact socially. So the church that I went to, and I wasn't even going to go to that church, the only reason I went to that church was because it was the closest in walking distance from where I was living. And so I walked there, and then I wasn't even going to go to that home group because of his late shift and irregular shifts, he hardly went to the church, but he went to the home group. And this is where we met. And then we just, initially he was ignoring me. He ignored me. You'd send just a friendly message. But at that point, I had no interest because I was so deep in figuring out my research proposal, because this was all in the space of 6 months, and you have 6 months to really do your research proposal.
I didn't even know that it was 6 months that you had
6 months, but it's not as long as it sounds.
Yes,
the time goes by so quickly. And so I think this was about August now, and we just started talking as friends. And then on October 1st, we we went into a relationship. And so I called my mother and I said, Mommy, pray about this, because you have your praying mother.
Yes.
And of course you come here, you don't really have any time to waste, really. I'm not a time waster.
Right, not a time waster.
And so I am very, very happy with the decision that we made.
That's great.
Yeah, and it's funny because there's an unconventional way. If you know Matt, he's very unconventional, and the way I met his family, like I met his sister,
right.
But we didn't meet. He turned up and he told his parents that he has somebody to introduce, and then we just turned up. So they didn't know anything at all.
They didn't know anything at all.
And funnily, it wasn't awkward. It wasn't awkward at all, and everybody got on. Yeah, it was really good.
That is good. I mean, I literally wrote. Let me just read what I wrote here. I wrote this down. I wrote this down on my paper that I did my little script for this podcast. I literally wrote, when I saw the news of the engagement, I remember being so happy for you. So happy. I mean, of course, everyone, they put the little like and they put the little congratulations on the Facebook, but I was really happy for you, Samantha. So congratulations again for being a married woman for 3 years. But I think it's going to be through in December, right? Like December.
So January. So January will be 4.
Oh, right. It was at the top of the year. That's right. It was at the top of the year. So being in Japan, it was at the top of the year. But yes, I really, really saw that news, and I was just so happy because I'm like, Samantha is getting a happy ending. This is one chapter kind of closing, but also opening at the same time, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
Like not that you were searching, but like you said, you came to Australia, you were minding your own business, and things just happened. God set it up, and that's just, you worked with it. Why complain? I've never heard, and this is a thing too. I'm talking a lot here, but I've never really heard you complain about anything ever. Everyone has their little moments, but I've never really, like, I complained a lot. I didn't want to do anything, but I've never really heard you complain. How do you do it?
Well, I wouldn't say that's necessarily true. Because we're all human beings. Maybe
my moment, but maybe your temperament is different. Maybe that's what I mean.
Yeah, maybe my complaining is a bit different in terms of, I try to think about it logically speaking, and then see, all right, what can I do to remove this thorn in my side,
right?
For want of a better term, because that's essentially if you're probably experiencing a bad situation. So it's always just trying to, regardless of how bad the situation may be,
yes,
you just try to find solutions, really, and there is always a solution. Sometimes it may not look that way, but there's always a solution, and the solution may not come. That's the other part. The solution may not come right away, and for me, that's always been the hardest part in terms of like the waiting, the waiting, but also trying to fill that waiting period with something that's productive.
I understand what you mean, but yeah, you are here. You are Johnston. I have a friend. Literally, her name is Samantha Johnston, without the T. Another friend, but you're Johnston, and the other friend is Johnson. I'm like, oh my god. Okay, this is too much of a coincidence. But let's go back to let's go back to the Dyslexia Month awareness. What have you been doing in Australia on the internet so far for this month? Before that's one question, and another one is, in my research, I found that there are different types of dyslexia. I may have to cut this part of the episode and put it at the top somewhere else. But anyways, I found that there are different types of dyslexia. I didn't even know that, honestly. There's phonological, which is the one you mentioned that you are working with, the testing that you're doing with your kids. There's surface dyslexia, visual dyslexia, primary dyslexia, secondary dyslexia, which is developmental, and the trauma, which is acquired. What does that mean? I was particularly more intrigued by trauma dyslexia. So can you expound on that one?
Yeah, so in terms of the trauma, it goes a little bit back to the surface dyslexia. So you normally have the two types there, and then the surface is one where you normally receive, and I'll explain some of the what it looks like, but just at a very high level. It can be acquired, or it's usually acquired later on in life because of trauma, maybe trauma to the head, which causes, of course, brain damage, or maybe stroke. And so what it looks like now is that you don't necessarily have problems that people with phonological dyslexia have. So people with phonological dyslexia have problems pronouncing, with manipulating speech sounds. And people with phonological dyslexia tend to have a problem with pronouncing words that we call them regular words, so words that they are pronounced just as how they look, essentially. But people who have surface, dyslexia, they have a problem. They don't have phonological problems. They have problems with reading irregular words. So irregular words are words that aren't pronounced how they're spelled. So words like blood or choir, if we were to pronounce those just like they're spelled, we'll probably say chore.
Right.
Or we'd say blood. Or words like genre, we'd probably say genre. Something to that effect. You just know that these are irregular words, and you have to learn their pronunciation. People who have surface or acquired dyslexia, those types of dyslexia that occur as a result of brain injury, have a problem with reading these irregular words.
Wow. And that affects writing. Does that affect writing? Because if you can't read the irregular words, you probably won't know how to spell them.
Writing. Yes.
Wow. So does
dyslexia? So it can affect writing.
Wow. So does dyslexia? Is it the disorder? Is it a disorder? Disability? What's the proper term to say? Disability?
It's usually people have different ways of saying it. People do say a reading disability, reading difficulty, reading difference. We just know it's a difficulty.
Right. So the difficulty, people with this difficulty, this dyslexia, is it the same one where, for example, they mix the letters up like a B and the D and the P and the Q, and they write the E the other way?
Yeah, so this backward writing, it can be a feature. It's not necessarily always indicative. You need to run additional tests.
Right.
But it does suggest that there needs to be some sort of follow-up if this continues. And this is why, like, for example, when we do when I do talks with teachers, for example, I always say to them, even when you're teaching kids, even if they don't have a reading difficulty, it's always better to teach them sounds that are not similar, or letters that look the same. It confuses them. So you try to b and v don't sound similar. So you try to space them out and try to teach them differently, because people will confuse them. But in terms of the writing, that is a characteristic as well.
Wow. I mean, I'm living in Japan, and of course, I'm teaching English here. And sometimes when I see students writing, they write some stuff backwards. And I'm like, is it because they don't know the English spelling well? Or is it like a problem in their own language itself, which is translated on paper for English also? You know what I mean? Of course, I'm no psychologist, but it has me thinking all the time, like, how is it that literally, for example, I have family members who I think are dyslexic, and because it was never corrected, it just went on and got worse and worse and worse. But some of kids that I've interacted with, they write how my cousin used to back then when she was a child, in terms of changing the letters, putting them. But I'm like, how are you doing this in another language? You know what I mean? Like, you don't necessarily speak English, or it's not your first language, but learning it, you can probably say the words just like we all can do, like you said, human beings, and oral. the brain wasn't for necessarily reading, but for speaking, that kind of thing. So they can speak, but writing, they literally, and I don't know if this is even politically correct or the right thing to say, but they would write like someone who has dyslexia, if that makes sense. In that part of
it's interesting.
yeah.
It'd be interesting to follow up with additional tests because it could be for various number of factors.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it is that they haven't had I wouldn't want to say they haven't had much exposure. Maybe a lot of times you just need more practice,
Right?
And this is where a lot of times I think about the science of reading, which is what teachers need to know, because there's a science to teaching reading, but then there's also the science of learning. And a lot of times we know that practice is good. We know practice is good. Practice makes perfect. But what a lot of people find surprising is that there's a particular way that you need to practice in order to better commit the information to memory. So, for example, and this is what we call the science of learning. Mm-hmm. And for example, what I would say to teachers is that, let's say you're teaching this particular sound today.
Yeah.
What the science of learning says in terms of how we best practice is that you don't teach them again in the evening. You space the practice out. Don't teach them the next day, maybe the other day. So this is how the brain works. And it's essentially, it sounds contradictory, but essentially the brain actually remembers when you give it a bit of time to forget.
That's interesting. The brain actually remembers when you give it time to forget. I think is that why they always tell us sometimes we don't study so much, just leave it alone for a minute and then come back to it. Okay.
Yeah.
I see.
So this is called spaced practice.
I see. Maybe that's the one time maybe that is the one time I would see you without a book. It's when you're trying to remember. Wow, maybe that's that one time, like, hey, she's been practicing this for a long time now, even on her own. Wow, that is good. That is good. I really didn't know that much. I mean, of course, we all know a little bit about every little topic that's out there, but this really has a lot of different levels that a lot of people don't even consider, and there are a lot of teachers out there, a lot of professionals out there who they've been trained like 10 years ago, for example, but there's always new research,
yes.
And sometimes people aren't keeping up with the research. So where can we find your research, for example, that you've been doing?
So in terms of my research, I'm working on the publications at the moment because I'm still working on, because my studies were longitudinal.
Yes.
So at that particular point in time, I wasn't able to publish them, but I'm currently working on them, and I usually publish them through my Reading for Humanity page on Instagram. So I have at Reading for Humanity, and this is where I try to use this platform to share tips, tricks about the science of reading. Well, let me not say tricks. Let me just say the science of reading, because it is a science. And for me, I am really passionate about really educating parents and teachers about some of the things that they need to be doing in order for their students and their children to have better reading outcomes, because the research tells us that if you aren't reading skillfully, or if you aren't reading properly by grade 3, you have a harder time catching up in school.
Wow. Okay. So you heard that, guys. You can find her stuff being posted on Instagram at Reading for Humanity. That's the Instagram page. Yeah. Check it out. I'll probably post the link somewhere if this video goes on YouTube somewhere. But you can find more stuff in the description of this episode itself. I think that covers a lot. We've covered quite a lot, Samantha. We talked about ourselves when we knew each other, the journey from JA, which is Jamaica, to the UK, to the AUS. Wow, I just did lots of short abbreviations. JA, UK, AUS. Right. So it was really fun talking to you, Samantha. Getting to know more about what you do and how you go about doing it, or how you went about doing it, actually. And I'm very happy for you. where you are right now. You know, I think we're the
Thank
same
you.
age. Maybe I'm a little bit older. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm a little.
I
Maybe
am.
I'm just
Sometimes I
months
still have to
older. Just
ask
months.
myself.
Just months older. Just months. Not super old. But you've accomplished so much, and I just love the tenacity that you have. You always persist. You should have been on Preston. In relentless pursuit of excellence. That was the motto. And you always, that's what you do. You strive for it. You keep going. And that's admirable. That is so admirable. And I just hope someone out there finds this sort of inspiring. Not that this shouldn't be inspiring. I wasn't necessarily trying to be inspirational, but what we spoke about here, I think, was very important. And especially for Dyslexia Awareness Month, I didn't even know that we had a Dyslexia Awareness Month. Honestly, the only learning difficulty month that I really knew of was Autism Awareness Month, and that's in, I think, April, is it, or is it May? I think it's April.
I'm not really sure.
Right. So that's the only thing I knew of, and the only way I really knew this might sound so horrible, was because I watched a reality TV show and I liked the person on the show, and her son had autism, and I just started reading stuff about autism. That's how I knew about it in terms of the month and what people do for celebrating it. So is there like a color for Dyslexia Awareness Month? I know it's October and pink is for cancer, but is there a color for Dyslexia Awareness?
Yes, so red is the color because it represents the red marks that you'd get in your book, because you know, when you get something wrong, you'd usually get like an X, you know, the red pen saying it's wrong. And so too often, a lot of our students with dyslexia, they have exposure to too many red marks.
Right.
So we just wanted to reclaim that and turn it into something good.
Wow, that's amazing, man. That's so cool. Because literally, that is why I kind of started my podcast and I used the name Chatterbox, because I wanted to reclaim the negative that has been placed on me. Like, all is being told. You talk so much, Keirn. Shut up. But here it is, a Chatterbox Keirn, with one of my friends, Samantha, who has been killing it in the psychology game, killing it in the education game for a long time. She has never given up. She's always driven, and that is something so admirable and commendable. And if no one says it enough, you are doing amazing. Just saying it, just putting it out there. So that is all the time we have, Samantha. Thank you so much for coming on my podcast today. I can't wait to see what else you do, and maybe we could have you on here again for a future episode.
Yeah, I would appreciate it. I love these sort of events, just talking and just trying to share my story, because a lot of times, not a lot of times, but we do go through the same things. It may be in a different form.
Yep.
And just one of the things that I've learned over the years is just to go after your dreams, know what you're about. You will get negativity along the way, but that just indicates that you are trying to make a difference. And if you know that you're doing everything with integrity and you're doing it above board, then I would just say continue doing it and don't talk yourself out of it.
Oh my God, I need to literally keep that in mind. Don't talk yourself out of anything else, Keirn. You've been listening to that voice for too long.
It's true, because I did this when because I teach as well. I teach undergraduate psychology.
Right.
And I was very nervous about doing it, very, very nervous. And I was offered the position to do it throughout my PhD. And I would tell my supervisor, no, I'm not ready. Mm-hmm. I would tell him every sort of thing, like, no, I'm busy. I was busy, but I could have, if I wanted to make the time, I would have. Right. And I said no. And the only reason I said that was because I could not picture myself, Keirn, couldn't picture myself being in front of a class. Wow. And then I was thinking, will they understand my accent?
Yes.
How will it be? And so I decided, after the 3 years, and I realized, I said, I'm just, whatever happens. and I went into it, and it was, I love teaching. I love
Wow.
it. I really, really enjoy it, and just that rapport with the students and getting their feedback and saying, oh yes, you've done this well, you can improve this here. And yeah, it's about not talking yourself out of it, because you never know who you're inspiring, and you never know who you'll be able to teach something.
Right. That's so true.
So
And
really,
I
how
really
I
believe
see
that
it
now.
now is just going out, using the social media. Mm. Yeah, so you're using your social media platform, you're doing it with integrity. And one of the things that really, really I've accepted, that in this, platform, it is really a privilege. And a lot of times, I think for me, with being in your own head, you make it about yourself. But when you're actually trying to read somebody, you have to say to yourself, like, it's not about me.
Yes.
It's not about me at all. You're trying to deliver a message, you're trying to make a change, a good change. So really, in the end, you use what you have, and you learn along the way.
Right. That's true. I'll take that advice, because that is sound advice, And for anyone listening out there, if you're just listening to this podcast and you made it this far, don't give up. Keep at it. Keep at it. Do it for you. Do it for you. And do it for the purpose. For yourself and for the purpose. What it is that you're trying to achieve, keep doing it. So, thank you again so much, Samantha. And I look forward to hearing more from you in the future.
Thanks for having me, Curtin.
Okay, let me just click pause or stop. Pause, stop. I hope you enjoyed the conversation that we had. And as she mentioned, you can find her on Instagram at Reading for Humanity. She does amazing work in the field of psychology and education. And I'm just so proud of my friend and what she's accomplished. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you with the next guest.